Welcome back to the channel. All right, it's time for the monthly update. This is recorded at the very end of September. Obviously going to be the update for October between seasons 21 and 22. Now, this is the default rankings, right? Myself, the MCoC Illuminati, have been doing this since before Battlegrounds even came into the game, when it was just in the CCP beta and those sorts of things. Their champions are all ranked between dual threat, attacker, or defender, and ranked and scored where they would be the highest, right? So that's why you're not going to see a champion necessarily in multiple categories. Always keep that in mind. Always also keep in mind, this is the default rankings, right? We're coming off a pretty nuke meta, moving on to, in the Gladiator circuit anyway, the crit me meta, where some champions will be significantly better where they otherwise would be. I use this list myself to make my rank up decisions, and then each time a new meta comes up, maybe one or two champions, something like that, I try to take them to rank 2 or something to fill out based on what's going to be accentuated by the current node set. And just again, I think you know this by this point in time, but I just finished in Mysterium 1, was in the top 200. I think it was 253 was my official rating. Some of the players here finish in Celestial 6 and 5. And then other players are playing lower because they're just not what they push, but they're incredibly smart. We all put our thoughts, our ideas, and our experiences together to come up with these lists to put them out for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about all the champions that have the microphone by them. They're the ones that have been promoted, or there's someone that we at least want to keep our eye on as we continue to move through. There are a lot of changes this month, and then one of the big reasons is we finally had a pure nuke meta, right? We've been coming off of these ones like the extend meta, where some champions were just totally again accentuated. If you think about like Ronan, right, and like what they're able to do, or like Serpent's always a brutal defender, doesn't really need his buffs being extended, but there we found ourselves. A nuke meta gives us a better idea to be like, what we feel like is happening actually is. It's just not this meta accentuating something or making something significantly worse. So there's quite a bit of movement that we've been thinking about for a while. So let's go ahead and jump into this finally. We're going to start with the dual threat tier above all. And I really want to remind this, because every video I see this happening. Attackers and defenders are just as important. You want to fill out your deck. Draft strategy is a big deal. I'm talking about this more and more on my streams. Make sure you stop by and you continue to talk about it and go through not only deck strategy and building, but then also draft banning, that sorts of things. And then who I'm going to draft in there as far as what I see in my opponent's matchup. All right, let's go ahead and go, right? Where the first one we're going to do is Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham, this is a promotion. The ability to do damage without like having to hit the champion too much. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot when we get to Sinister. Spider-Ham has this, right? I covered Spider-Ham. Like, this is years ago. I put out the video calling him a stone cold killer. He was phenomenal. It was great. I feel like he finally has a mode that's really for him, right? He can be a little squishy, so we didn't see him in too much high tier war, but those the amount of damage that can be accumulated quickly with all of those power stings, even taking like class disadvantage matchups and things like that. We do him as a dual threat because there is a defensive threat, but a lot of that's going to come down to deck construction and who your opponent's drafted. An example is, I did try to make a late push, and I waited too long, essentially. But the morning the season was ending, I did try to sneak into Celestial 6 there, and I actually won a round using an Atuma against a defending Spider-Ham. It's just one of those weird matchups that ends up happening in a Battlegrounds matchup sometimes. And so I really think it's important that we think more of Spider-Ham as an attacker, but there's enough dual threat purpose there for him to have that designation. Moving on, the other one we're going to talk about here, we got to move through, there's a lot, is Mr. Sinister. I'm sure by now you're aware, because I can see how well the videos are doing. I told you I was going to do this, and I did the best Champions to Awaken, best Champions to your Saga resource. So many videos where I was openly talking about, I'm going to buy some of the daily deals so I can get Sinister faster, quicker, take him to rank 3. I'm going to awaken him, and I'm going to take him to as high a stick as I could. I'll take him to stick 126. In just it's not limited. Actually, we spent a lot of time testing him, doing fights, doing Battlegrounds, doing friendlies, doing war, and all these things. He is phenomenal, right? Everything that the 6-star rank 5 ascendants we're doing, and then make it better. I'm going to continue to get out Sinister videos. I've been putting them out. If you're unfamiliar with it, check the playlist on my channel, Mr. Sinister. He's bonkers. What I think this is going to do is he's still going to be that incredibly troublesome defender. I'm curious to see if attackers like Cosmic Ghost Rider still might, because Cosmic Ghost Rider is just so wild, right? Still might be able to take him, but I think this is going to make it so you really want a robot with the heal block or shocker to take him out. 10 to 10 for sure. If for no other reason, then he is someone that you're either just auto banning or you're making sure you have counters in your deck. He's that much of a defensive threat. And then offensively, being able to take out bullseyes, and then we're going to continue to stretch him and pressure him. And I used him to take out an awakened Nightcrawler the other day, get 50,000 score. So he's fantastic, phenomenal. Feel very, very strongly about that for the way he's going to help shape drafts and decks. In tech, quite a few to talk about. Red Skull, there was talk that we had started to consider, like, maybe we need to move this guy down. But I'm really glad we waited. And here's the wild thing, was while this last meta in Gladiator Circuit for Season 21 was more nuke, you could not use champions with energy, passives, or active, right? Well, a lot of his damage comes from shock. And so I hadn't even thought about removing from a deck. And then players started catching on, realizing word got around, you could still use him. And I think that just points to how strong he is, right? We're starting to see counters like in Bill and things like that. And you can take him out quickly. It can happen. I'm not saying it can't. What I'm saying is he is someone that you can draft as a defender or as your domino counter or other things. And even in a meta where you couldn't use his shocks, he was producing reasonable scores against domino, because what you did is you just stacked up your armors and then you used, I can't even remember what it's called, basically the damage back mechanic, and made them hit into your block. He's a phenomenal one. Really a great defender, in my opinion, forcing drafts in the way people go about it. The next one we're talking about is Shuri. Shuri is one we have our eye on. We actually haven't demoted her score as far as she might be moving down. Tech continues to get stronger. Things continue to evolve. Defenders continue to come out that she can't take. She's not going to be good for. I still really like her, though, for her non-contact attack. So like Atuma, the rise of Atuma. You're going to see Atuma is up to a 10 now. As a defender, she's still very good for domino. But we've got Prowler now as well. And then another tech champion who's getting a promotion in attack. And we might even be bringing him higher. So people are starting to encroach upon her turf, let's call it a little bit, like Nova with the non-contact attacks. And so what that's basically doing is reducing her value slightly. Let's be really clear here. She's a 9. If we move her down, we're moving down to an 8 because she's not extremely fast, right? Still a great champion, still a reasonable defender, but Cosmic Ghost Rider absolutely destroys her. Show up, we'll talk about deck construction, things like that as we do streams. Just wanted to point out, we do have our eye on her. She's a phenomenal champion though, okay guys? Another one, we've been talking about this for months when we saw Punisher 29.9 was coming to the game as a 7-star. I was not able to awaken him. I didn't get lucky enough, but people who did took him to rank 3. It's exactly what we thought. It's exactly what we thought. A reasonable, good defender. So when you can place on defense, put the block pen, stat focus in. His specials are like impossible to dex, but he's a potent attacker. Can be used for onslaught. Can even be used for bullseye if you, especially if you're spec into collar tech, which people are doing. He's controlling combat power. If they can't get to their specials, you are just neutralizing a significant portion of their threat, and his damage is good enough to get very good scores in Battlegrounds. All right, those are the tier above all dual threat champion. All right, moving on to the top shelf dual threat champions. The first one we're going to talk about is Scorpion. This is basically just a virtue of him not being available as a 7-star. Still a fantastic champion, still can have the heal back with his Petrify off the SP2. If you've got him at the Awaken and all that, still a great champion, can be a bit of a threat on defense too with that really annoying evade, but struggles to punch up against a lot where you're facing a lot of these 7-star rank 3s and things like that. Still someone you can use. If you're having success with him, go for it. Spot, I'm aware of the like really eye-popping stuff that's happening. I still am of the thought though that you've got to, 1, play exceptionally well, and 2, you need the AI to cooperate. So while there are a lot of highlights, I'm not arguing that, and this 8 is a very good score. There's also a lot of fights that are going to go sideways where the AI is just not going to attack into you, where you're going to get cornered, and over time you're just going to sit there, and that whole time your score is going down. Great champion. I love playing Spot. I'm not saying Spot's bad. We got him with an 8, but I just can't put him at the same place as Photon and Spider-Ham. Moving on, Nightcrawler, slight demotion. This might be partially because we're just not seeing that many. Also, there are ways around his evade. Mr. Sinister being one of them. If you've got him awakened, that's going to be only reducible by ability accuracy via tech champions. So we might see him move back up, but what we're seeing right now, what people are seeing index across a variety of play levels in Gladiator Circuit, we did need to move him down. Damage is really good, but he's limited in utility there, right? We talked about this when we first came into the game, and I was like, let's not get too carried away with our Nightcrawler. Very good, very fun, but when we're putting an actual score on it, we got to keep this in mind. Bishop also slightly moving down. This is part of just the game growing. I've been talking about Bishop a lot, still a fantastic champion, so can really help you out. But as Mutant continues to grow and we have other champions who can handle Korgs for you or Atumas and not take damage back, like Bishop is probably going to do, or people learning to fight Korgs and have more and more options with the energy damage attacks and things like that, not necessarily needing what Bishop does. And also, not as many people have the super high sig Bishop where the unblockable special 2 is going to happen. So people have learned to either block the SB2 or they've learned to just completely evade it. Still great. 8 is a phenomenal score, but did need to reflect a slight decrease for him, slight demotion. The last one we're going to talk about here is for this tier of dual threats is Warlock. I personally actually wanted to move Warlock higher from my play experience. And this is one of the reasons why we get so many different opinions and experiences from so many smart players. The way I've constructed my deck and the way I tend to play, I want to play ugly. I want to bring people into like this thing where I've drafted a bunch of dual threats and a bunch of defenders. And eventually we're going to get to that third round and I might win with like a 46,000 score because someone just didn't have a good option for who I have as far as defenders are concerned, or I can flip those defenders and use them as attackers. They're really dual threats. Warlock is like a great example of this. People using Warlock to take out Bullseye, kind of doing some of what we just said about Punisher's 29. If they can't get to their special, then you're neutralizing a lot of their threat. Warlock can do that. It's just not as many places as he can do it as someone like Punisher 2099. The Illuminati kind of gave their opinion, and I couldn't disagree with it. So we've got him at 8, but is someone I personally wanted to point out as someone I see doing really awesome things and someone I personally would consider taking to rank 3 really, really soon. Okay, tier above all attackers, we're going to start off with White Tiger. Now, hopefully you've seen my Spicy Meter video on her. Just recently put it out. I was kind of hesitant to utilize her a lot in Battlegrounds, so I didn't have her awakened. But after watching showcases by like Bittersteel, JS, Trappy, so many different players, I went ahead and did it. And she's become one of my most consistent, not only attackers in general, but definitely for Serpents. She's phenomenal. She's amazing. I am working on the showcase, and just by playing more, there's utility that she has, particularly how she handles healing and power gain. That's amazing, and it's opening up fights that are just starting to kind of blow my mind. I'm very excited. I want to collect more fights, and I will definitely be getting out this showcase video for you. She is definitely, even unawakened, someone I am considering on my short list for my next rank 3s. Tiger, this is a slight demotion, and this is the same kind of talk and speech I'm going to give. You've heard me give this a lot. They're just not out as 7 stars, right? So depending on what tier you're playing in, I think it's important to keep in mind. If you're facing a lot of 7 stars, a lot of 7-star rank 2s, a lot of 7-star rank 3s, Tiger's starting to struggle. Not that she can't produce great things, but she's starting to take more block damage while she's landing her heavies and things like that. Important to keep in mind. She's an incredibly powerful champion. If she came out as a 7-star, she would shoot right to the top right away, but this is the sort of thing that we reflect every single month. Moving on, old OG Hulk, continuing to hold down the fort. The reason why we're talking about him just very briefly is this is a move to him as being rated as an attacker. His defensive prowess, not that it's not there, I'm not saying it's not there, but it's being diminished. People learn how to fight him. They're learning to use their striker into his unstoppable. People have skill counters that can handle him and things like that. And he's just so potent as an attacker. He's still definitely a 10 out of 10, just a different designation, right? Moving on, I hope you've seen my Luke Cage videos. I hope you have. If you haven't, honestly, go see them. And if you're like, dude, I don't want to watch yours, that's fine. Go watch someone else's. A great serpent counter, like future Ant-Man, so many mystics, just so much versatility. He is incredibly, incredibly powerful. His concussions are shutting off nodes, abilities. His exhaustions are handling ability powder rate. Phenomenal, phenomenal champion. I now finally have mine awakened. It's opening up in a more aggressive playstyle form. Scores are up in the 50,000s. He is fantastic. Moving on, we'll talk about Stark Spidey, possibly the best Battlegrounds attacker in the game. We were finally able to really sit down and like, look, across all these metas, he continues to be someone, he's dominant. He was an ultimate ban for me. I was even banning 7-star rank 2s. I was banning 6-star rank 5 Ascended, along with Juggernaut and Cosmic Ghost Rider this last season. his ability. And the last thing, the one that really just kicked him up was the nerf for the rebalance to bullseye, right? And so you could sit there and you could dex and not get those bleeds on you. And then he also has the power drain. So kind of going with the other things we've talked about with tech, where you can control power in that way in a Battlegrounds fight, which is a quicker fight. And if they can never get to their specials, you are neutralizing a significant amount of what makes the fight or the defender threatening to begin with. All right, let's take a look at the last two tiers of attackers. Top shelf attackers. Now, we don't have a lot of footage of a lot of 7-star rank 3 hoods. I think that's going to continue to happen, though. This is a fantastic champion. One of the main reasons, it was hard to tell, were they not falling out of the meta, but were they not as meta dominant as they previously were, or was it due to the fact that they were locked behind the 6-star rarity? We'll find out, I think, in like 2 or 3 months. And that being said, we wanted to at least call this out that we had him there. Shathra is a champion that I actually think could be significantly higher. When I tested her, when I did the new champion video on her, I actually really wanted to rate her extremely high, like extremely high. She is potent based on my experience, but we can't test Battlegrounds in CCP testing. It's just not something we can do. So we always start conservative with champions. We're starting her with the 7. Remember, she's got a power steal. Looks to me like she's going to be a great counter for Serpent, which already gives her some meta relevance. But it felt like that was going to carry through to a lot of other champions, and she's going to be significantly more versatile than just someone you're bringing in for Serpent. In a month or 2, I will not be surprised if she is in the tier above all for attackers. Mordo is a recent promotion. I think it's TC on my Discord server. Has been talking about Mordo forever. A lot of people have a lot of smart players. It seems difficult to play, but the power gain can really get going. You can get your Furies up there significantly. He has like the whole ability accuracy can't be reduced. I think it's by like passives and things like that. So he has a lot going on. Not a bad defender by today's standards. He's not the great one that maybe he was 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. But we did need to recognize slight increase. Someone definitely being used in a variety of tiers to be pretty potent on the attacking side. Moving on to science, we're now at Red Guardian. This is a slight decrease in value. Hard to tell if it was metas. Hard to tell if it's just him not being a 7-star available. I wish he was a 7-star. I love playing him. Absolutely love it. He might be someone that just next month, we've got him right back to a 9. So don't overthink this one, but we did just want to at least point it out. And this one, we finally did pull the trigger like, hey, let's put him to 8. Science is pretty stacked. There's a lot of options for people. Let's kind of show them visually that if they're choosing between this and like a 7-star Luke Cage, go with the 7-star Luke Cage, in our opinion. And that one's even very close, to be very, very, very honest. All right. And then we move on to Nefaria, one of the other new champion this month. He's someone that, again, I think we're often going to see these highlight fights. We were not able to test him on the CCP server. I'm still, and I meant what I said in my new champion video on him, is like, is he more niche? Or is he going to be able to supersede that and be relatively versatile? And I think ultimately we're not going to know for a while. Unfazed is still a thing. That whole like heavy, or his whole special has to be well-timed blocked and then also punished. Like there's a lot of hoops to get through. If you can jump through those hoops, though, if the animations between the defender and the attacker line up and they're not running unfazed, you can produce some amazing results. So I think he's going to be a champion that's going to constantly be tough to evaluate, because even if he's not widely usable, we're going to see highlight fights out of. It's just going to take time. 7 feels safe for us. I don't see him moving down. He's very, very potent. So I think that is abundantly clear. The next champion we'll talk about is Jabari. Defenders putting debuffs on you, or someone where you can shut down the evade. She's very, very powerful. It's at least something to call out. Every single month, it feels like someone's saying we should move her up to at least a 7. I at least want to call out that. And I know there's a lot of Jabari fans out there. Quickly, we'll talk about Negasonic. This is just a reclassification. We had her as a dual threat. One of the reasons we even have the little chick is to call out, and also the dice is like, they're new. People just might not know how to fight them, and it's going to take some time. I think we're learning that her defensive prowess is more due to someone just not knowing how to fight them very well. She does not have a large health pool. There's not a lot of defensive tactics or things for you to handle in her ability kit. She's more of an attacker, and a pretty good one. She can handle a lot of skill threats. Moving on, we'll quickly talk about White Magneto. We are seeing some evidence of him being pretty powerful. We talked about this. He's a good champion, not as dominant as some of the other mutants, obviously clearly more highly rated. But if you've pulled a 7-star or you're just looking to get through, especially if you have him awaken, it helps out his damage and his play loop significantly. He's at least worth calling out because this is new. This is new for him as a 7-star. Moving on, we'll quickly mention in the tech, Howard the Duck. Like we saw what Barrowman did in VVC 6. He dethroned Andrew the Ref. Andrew had been the VVC champion after knocking off FinTech. It is now Barrowman. It was a great matchup. And Barrow with his 6-star rank 5 ascended Howard the Duck was pulling off some great stuff. And not just for Domino. Make sure you have your Howard the Duck awakened though before you try to use him for Domino. And then calling out, this is also new to the new event, right? Ultron. Yes, you could pull him from the Rage Crystal, but I think it's got to be the most rare 7-star in the game. If somehow you're able to get him awakened, if you chose to use your Saga Stones on him, like I believe William and the Illuminati did, pulling off fights against Domino, just a fantastic champion. So we want to reflect that as well. Moving on to Hercules and Hyperion here in the Cosmic class. Hercules is actually I think it's a designation change from dual threat to attacker. I still think Hercules can be someone who can stall just enough for you to give you that chance to win. People have used their Hercules to take out my 6-star rank 3 Red Skulls. He can obviously be good for Shuri because he does have that anti-miss. So if you're exceptional with Herc, I think he's still definitely someone to consider putting in. He's obviously great for questing, but this is a Battlegrounds tier list. And then can be a stall on defense if someone doesn't have the ability to turn off or get rid of his immortality phase. So keep that in mind as well. And then Hyperion, this is also another reclassification. There's just so many mystics available. They're going to be able to handle his power gain. Not that he can't be placed on defense, but you want to be smart about it, right? If someone places their Hyperion against my America Chavez or my White Tiger, I'm just laughing, I'm giggling, right? And White Tiger and America Chavez are just in so many Battlegrounds decks, along with other Mystic champions who are going to handle this and make him just an absolute joke. Still a very potent attacker, though, so it's important to keep in mind. And then Beta Ray Bill, very quickly, we'll just touch on him, and that the last meta just wasn't good for him, so we just haven't had a chance to really test him. I don't know how he's going to turn out in this next meta, but this is why we have the dice emoji and why we try to start off a little bit conservative. You just give you a basic, safe idea, and then we can go from there when we have more data on them. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Oh, that is it for the attackers. Let's go ahead and move on to defenders. Again, I want to emphasize that defenders are incredibly important, okay? We spend less time on them, but it's just because there's fewer of them. There's so many attacking options in decks that it's often hard for a defender to stand up and know that they're not going to just get hard countered by someone. The first one we're going to talk about is Enchantress. She's rough, y'all. Like, there are very few just like full-on hard counters. I'm seeing people even try to use like Shocker and things like just to get the fight over with. Luke Cage hasn't been bad for her. Titania hasn't been bad for her. Her AI just is part of it. I really genuinely feel, and we've seen this before, it's not new, and I'm not saying for sure it's happened. I'm just saying, like, look, it's pretty clear America Chavez has a heavy bias, right? It's pretty clear Mysterio has a heavy bias. These also happen to be champions where their ability kit is written where if they were heavy more often, it'd be more difficult to fight them. To me, it feels like Enchantress has a negative heavy bias, making her that much tougher to fight, making her that much harder to remove her spells and these sorts of things. I was insanely lucky and pulled her in that opening day's opening. I've taken my rank 3. She's produced phenomenal results. She's also gotten nuked a few times by people who I think just knew what they were doing and were able to get her spells off quickly and then nuke her down. I had a really great fight with Luke Cage against a 6-star rank 5 Ascended. So she is beatable, but there's a lot that makes her very, very dangerous. Man-Thing, we're seeing 7-star rank 3s. I actually fought B McGee's the other day live on stream with my Luke Cage, and I had forgotten that B had taken his Man-Thing to rank 3. That's a massive Man-Thing, and it took a long time. In fact, in the middle of the fight, I would begin to wonder, like, what is wrong? Why is this taking so long? And remember, he reduces the extra damage that would come from crits. And so that's something that's just going to constantly make him powerful, especially if you're Mystic Dispersion. And then Jaeger has actually shown us some fights of Man-Thing versus like Serpent. So you could use him offensively as well, but he's more of a defender. It's definitely someone who could catch some people by surprise. The next champ we'll quickly talk about is the leader. This is another new champ. Came out with like not a ton of fanfare in the summer. I don't think metas have been particularly great for him. He's just now in the Titan Crystal. I'm seeing some actually kind of good things out of him on offense and defensively. We're going to very much keep our eye on him. Could be someone that in the next month or two is even in a defender or an attacker category. I think potentially moving to dual threat could be an option as well. Hard to tell with him being new and people maybe just not knowing how to fight him. The big defensive promotion for this month is actually Attuma. I've recently taken my Attuma to rank 3. And over the course of the season, I started just auto drafting him. What I started feeling was Attuma became the defender that I had the most confidence if I needed to draft a defender early. I had the most confidence that I would be able to place him, that my opponent would not have a worthy counter. Now, I also started auto banning Juggernaut and Cosmic Ghost Rider. And it just continued to play out. Attuma kept winning me matches, not necessarily because he survived and defeated the attacker, but because he took so much damage off from them while he was doing it. And because he was at rank 3, it started taking a while. And I mean this. I mean it. I was drafting him over Bullseye. I was drafting him over Serpent early in drafts. That alone was like, that's got to make him a 10. That's got to make him a 10. Because he's shaping drafts. He's shaping decks. He is an essential part of my draft strategy that continued to work out. He's a great defender. Moving on, Dust. Dust has moved up to a 9. And she's a different kind of defender, right? She's most likely not going to kill you, but she's going to take time. She's incredibly tanky. And if they're awakened, and especially if their SIG's starting to go up, you now need to start paying attention to your combo counter because you can end up with an extra sand debuff. And then if you get too many of those, you're going to cause the dust storm, and now you're taking damage you cannot just avoid. She also turns off your willpower. So any sort of mistake is going to be a significant problem that you can't overcome. That all combined with the tankiness, to me, is a 9 defender. It's really hard because these are different types of defenders that are asking for different sorts of attackers. And that Dust is also someone where you're like, well, no, I have my Serpent, or I have my Shocker, or I have my Ironheart is a particularly good attacker, and I destroy her and say, yes, you do. That's totally accurate. But without that 1 or 2 hard counters, or in a scenario where you just don't get them, or someone could strategically use them, about the value to the strategic use as far as placing them as a very difficult defender. She's up there, in my opinion. Hard to say for us between 9 and 8, but she felt like she made so much more sense in this tier with these defenders than moving her down with the others. And that is it. That is actually it for the month. I thought we had one more to talk about. There was a lot to talk about. Like I said, with a slightly more nuke meta, I think we were able to really evaluate and decide if it had just been a situation where certain metas were accentuating certain attackers and defenders or making them not as good, or if there was truly something where the meta has shifted due to new attackers, new defenders, new 7-stars being released, that sort of thing. As usual, though, let me know what we think you got right. Let me know what we think you got wrong. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.